The Bats is going back to basics. Here's your look at McFarlane Toys' Superpowers Batman. As a child, Bruce Wayne watched as his parents were brutally killed in Gotham City's crime alley. Traumatized by their deaths, he devoted his life to becoming the world's greatest weapon against crime, the Batman. The Cape Crusader, maybe not as classic as his Kenner counterpart. Before we get a closer look at Batman, let's go ahead and take the tape measure right to the very top of his pointed cowl. That's where his ears are. The figure stands about 4¼ inches in height, or the figure once again is a little over 10 centimeters tall. I say once again because we've already had a look at a superpowers figure here on this channel. Let's move over Batman here and bring in Superman. You know, the longer I look at Superman, the more I think I'm warming up to this line. Batman, I think, does take a little too much of a departure from the way the original Kenner Batman was, which we'll talk about more in a moment. But I kind of like the Superman. He's growing on me. And then, of course, why I freed up a little bit of space right in the middle here is we're going to bring in a vintage superpowers figure, which, again, the only one I have, unfortunately, at my disposal is Green Lantern. By the way, in between reviews, I did check online. I checked around some of the places where I would expect to find superpowers, and yeah, go in for some crazy, stupid money. At this point, I can only hope that somebody has a superpowers collection they want to get rid of. If that's the case, and that's you that I'm describing, give me a call. Okay, maybe you can't give me a call, but at least let me know down below in the comments section if you have any superpowers figures that you want to do away with. I'm the person that you want to be directing that to. Don't worry, I'll buy them off of you. In the meantime, though, I did want to bring in the packaging that came included with the Batman. There is one thing that they did do differently here for Batman's packaging that wasn't present when we had a look at Superman. I'm going to bring in Superman's, and Superman's definitely was more in line with the original 80s toy line. Superman doesn't look like he changed all that much from the original one that Kenner got before. But Batman does things a lot differently, though. In this case, it looks very heavily inspired by Jim Lee's design of Batman, right down to the Bat emblem, which is something that wasn't on the original Superpowers Batman. The original one had the oval, yellow oval, with the black bat symbol inside. The back of the package, again, is exactly the same with a very small read-up. I love, once again, that they did add a star border around that. But again, you've got a brand new Batman logo, same with on the top. They did do things, like I said, they changed things up a little bit more than what we got with Batman, with Superman. Let's move that out of the way. By the way, I didn't mention this with the review of Superman, but none of these figures come included with accessories. I don't think even the original Batman or the original Superman came included with accessories. Things like the Joker, for example, the one they still have sealed. Probably never going to be opening that one up. He did come included with an accessory. And I think also Green Lantern came included with his lantern, which I don't have anymore. But unfortunately, short of the cape, Batman and Superman come included with no accessories whatsoever. What they do have, though, is they do have a cape. And the cape, I've already taken the liberty of attaching onto the Batman's back neck there. Basically, it's the exact same as what we got with Superman. I'm just going to put down Batman here for a second. The cape is very shiny, and it's very prone as well to having wrinkles developing. You can see right away where this wrinkle is left behind from the way it was sitting inside the plastic tray. It's sewn also the exact same way as what they do with Batman. With Superman, it keeps wanting to say Batman. With Superman also as well, you can see that they've sewn this around essentially like a C-clip piece of metal. The metal does have some flexibility to it, so if it's not wide enough, you can certainly widen it yourself. I do think like the way they've sewn this, it sits way too high. It would have been nice, in fact, if they could have found a way to actually leave a little bit of space and sew it down below. But obviously, they wanted to have it as close to this clamp as they could get it, so it fits snug around the character's neck. I'm going to clip this around Batman right now. And like you get a lot of excess, you can see there very much on the side. I made the joke when we looked at Superman. Was it really a joke? Probably wasn't. That it looked a lot like Doctor Strange's cape. And I kind of very much get that as well when I'm looking at Batman here. The cape should probably sit, I think, a little bit lower. I think originally on the Superpowers line, there wasn't as much excess stitching done here. And the cape should have probably looked a little bit more like that and not as bulky as it does right now. Again, talking about that original Superpowers Batman, there was a lot of changes between this one and that original one. The colors, first of all, were still gray and blue, but the colors on the original vintage toy were a lighter gray and a lighter blue. Why did I have to use that place is the point. One thing also they have very much done differently is the Bat emblem. The emblem on the original Kenner line Batman would have actually had the circular oval in yellow and a smaller bat logo inside. Because, of course, they're trying to base this, I think, around Jim Lee's design of Batman, or a more current-looking Batman, they decided instead to do away with an oval and made a very large bat emblem instead. Now, the head sculpt is one thing I did want to talk about. It's modern, but I think I still like the idea of looking at the original vintage toy. Now, I'm trying my best to pull myself away from always wanting to compare this to the original vintage line. But of course, this is based on the original Superpowers figures. You can't help but make that comparison. Batman had notably a longer head on the original release. This one seems to have a very squared head, very long ears as well. The original vintage Superpowers figure was also carried over to the 1989 Batman movie wave, where we originally had the same Batman bat head before eventually getting a Michael Keaton-inspired head sculpt instead. I mean, it's okay for a modern-looking Batman, but man, I really do miss the original vintage Kenner. How many times have I now said vintage? How much do I miss the original vintage? There I go, saying it again. Superpowers Batman figure head sculpt. Again, like the head looks a little too squished for my liking. Looks a little too wide as well. The paint's pretty good for what we get. The blue is nicely matched to what we get for the gloves, for the lower trunks, and the lower feet as well. The original Superman, the original Batman and Superman, in fact, I think both had triggered legs, where if you squeezed them together like this, Batman's arm in this case would have moved up and down like this. Just a punching action. Unfortunately, they've done away with completely all the gimmick for all these Superpowers figures. And while you still get the limited articulation on these figures, essentially you're getting, what, 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Actually, you're getting 8 because you're also including... No, that's not true. You're actually getting 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We've got to count the fact that the head is a separate piece as well. You are getting the same articulation as the original Superpowers figures, but you're just not getting the gimmick. And I kind of really wish that they could have found a way to still include the gimmick. Anyways, though, for the articulation here on Batman, it's the exact same as the Superman we looked at before. Turning his head the way I'm turning his head right now, one thing you'll notice is it gets really caught up in his cape. You may even want to just take the cape off, move Batman's head to where you want to have it, and then put the cape back in place. Yeah, the head seems to just want to catch and snag the cape every single time you move it. He does have the same articulation in the arms, so you can move those back and forth. There's no waist swivel. So right there's 3, and then 4 and 5 are to have Batman sitting. So maybe down the road, if I do decide to have a look at that Superpowers Batmobile that I still have in my collection, no driver, unfortunately, for that, I could probably use for a stand-in for right now, this Batman figure. And I can only hope that the people are kind in the comment section and don't berate me for the fact I don't have the original Kenner figure. But like I said, he does have the legs that move back and forth, so you can have Batman either standing or sitting, and then you can, of course, bend the knees as well if you want to have Batman more in a crouch position. Again, it's a good-looking Batman, but man, I wish they could have had it closer, I think, to having it look like the original one that Kenner had released. I wanted to keep saying vintage, but once again, there's Batman, getting him to hopefully stand, and just again bring in Superman. Between the two, I like Superman more. Maybe it's just because the Superman reminds me a little bit more like the original one we got from the 80s, whether I actually had the figure or not. Superman, yeah, I think this one just looks like it's brighter, first of all, obviously, because Superman's going to have a brighter colored costume. I'm just trying to get this guy to stand now. Because, yeah, Batman is a little bit more of a darker color. Clearly, they were more inspired, I think, from a modern-looking Batman costume. That's why we get less one that we look at, less one that we got from the Kenner before, and instead we get one that kind of does things a little bit different with the emblem. The head sculpt, like I said, I find is just a little too squished. It's a little too squared off. Of the two that we've looked at thus far, my favorite of the two is Superman. In between takes, the curiosity got the better of me, and I happened to stumble over on eBay. That's not a good place to go if you have a little bit of time on your hands. I did happen to see a bunch of 1984 Kenner Superpowers Batman figures. The ones, of course, I was looking for were the ones that were complete. They didn't have to still be sealed on card, because I know I didn't want to take out a second mortgage in order to get one. But just to look at one example here, there's a 1984 Kenner Superpowers Batman figure complete with cape. Paint's pretty good on it. It's $120. No, I'm serious. It's $120, and then there's shipping on top of that as well. I don't want a classic Batman that bad. I will be sticking with this one for the time being. And, to be really fair, though, I think McFarlane has done a service to the classic fans, the classic collectors of the old Kenner figures by giving us sort of the closest thing that we can get without shelling out over $100 to get one of the original ones that Kenner did before in the 80s. This one, of course, does take some liberties, luxuries when it came to its design. It doesn't look as much like Batman as Superman looked like Superman, but at least you get yourself the same clip-on cape. The material on the cape is definitely shinier. I think it works a little bit better here, honestly, for Batman than it did for the Superman. It's still very prone, of course, to wrinkling. You may have even noticed, even at the beginning of this video, the way they attach the cape, they actually take one of those zip ties, not the zip ties, but one of those little fastener ties that you get for clothing, and they actually put it right through the cape. You may already see right now, there's a hole at the bottom of the cape where that little fastener was attached. Wish they couldn't have done that, because now there's a big hole in the back of the cape, but, you know, it's not a bad-looking Batman. Yes, the head sculpt, I think, is the one thing, the detractor to this figure. I've heard from many collectors that have picked up some of these. That is, it's the head sculpt, I think, that's sort of the deal breaker. Superman's looked better. Batman's looked a little squished. Haven't yet had the chance to pick up the Darkseid. And there's actually a few others that have now started to circulate. I think there's actually a John Stewart Green Lantern. There may even be a Batman Who Laughs. And I think there's also advertisement of a Flash. I would still likely be getting those. I still wish I could have had the original vintage figures, but this is kind of giving us the next best thing. And like I did say for the review of Superman, I'm very tempted to actually pick up a second set. Maybe I'll just get the Superman, because the Superman is the closest thing to looking like the original Kenner one. Batman doesn't look as much like the original 80s version, but it's still probably going to be picking up, if anything, another Superman, another Batman, and putting them on display. What do you think so far of this line? Do you wish that maybe McFarlane's team could have actually had at least Batman? Superman's not, again, all that bad, but could have wished that Batman could have been a little bit closer to the Kenner counterpart? Let me know down below in the comment section. If this is something, you have been collecting, let me know if you've been enjoying the line so far, and looking forward to any future waves that McFarlane's team does put out. Like I said, I did find this one over at Walmart. Finally found these in the wild. I didn't really want to pay online the prices of what some of these were going for, even like just normal retail prices, paying then shipping, paying all the things that go along with that on top of it. I'd much rather just to find these in the wild. And at least I didn't find vehicles, but I did find the Darkseid, I did find the Superman, and I did find the Batman that we looked at in this video. If you enjoyed, speaking of this video, make sure you hit it with a like. If you love the content you're seeing and do want to stick around for more, then make sure you hit the subscribe button down below and turn on the bell notification. And while for right now, we're going to take a bit of a break from the superpowers, there's definitely going to be a lot more videos coming your way. As always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.